The Galactic Alliance was losing. The war had lasted for nearly a decade, and in the beginning, they had believed victory was certain. The enemy, known as the Korthan Dominion, had superior numbers but lacked strategy. The Alliance had advanced technology, disciplined fleets, and powerful allies. Yet, one by one, those allies had fallen. Entire planets were burned to ash. The Korthan forces were relentless, consuming everything in their path like a swarm of locusts. Now, only a handful of Alliance strongholds remained, and they would not last much longer. Inside the War Council chamber, a holographic map displayed the battlefield. Red markers, representing Korthan warships, had surrounded the last Alliance-controlled sectors. Blue markers, once a symbol of hope, were nearly gone. High Commander Val of the Selvari race stood at the center, his 6 fingers trembling as he gripped the table. "We are finished," he muttered. "We must surrender." "Surrender." General Cora of the Drask snarled. His reptilian tail flicked in agitation. "You think the Korthan will accept surrender? They do not negotiate. They exterminate." A silence fell over the council. Everyone knew he was right. "We have one option left," spoke a deep mechanical voice. Admiral Rethos of the Makari, a cybernetic species, turned his glowing eyes toward the others. The humans. The very mention of that name caused unease in the chamber. A low murmur spread among the leaders. Humans. The Deathworlders. The unpredictable force that even the Korthan had never faced. "We cannot trust them," Val said quickly. "They are reckless, primitive, dangerous." Cora let out a sharp laugh. "That is exactly why we need them." The Galactic Alliance had always kept its distance from humanity. They were a young species, barely a few centuries into space travel, but they had spread fast, conquering the void with an ambition that frightened even the oldest civilizations. Their world, Earth, was a death world, a place so hostile that no other species would dare settle there. Yet humans had thrived in its chaos. They had survived wars, disasters, and self-inflicted destruction. If there was one thing humans knew how to do, it was to fight. "The Korthan are winning because they are ruthless," Cora continued. "But if there is any species more ruthless than them, it's the humans." Admiral Rethos leaned forward. "I have already sent the signal. They are coming." A stunned silence filled the room. "You contacted them without our approval." Val's voice was a mix of shock and fear. "I did," Rethos said without hesitation, "because waiting for your approval would have cost us the war." The council chamber fell deathly silent. Then the alarms blared. A new fleet had arrived at the battlefield. The humans were here. Aboard the human flagship, Warborn, Captain Elias Grant stood at the bridge, watching the battlefield unfold before him. The Alliance ships were barely holding together. The Korthan forces were preparing their final strike. "They're finished," his second-in-command, Lieutenant Harlow, said grimly. Elias smirked. "Not yet." The humans had been watching the war from the sidelines, but now they had been called upon, and humanity never backed down from a fight. He turned to his crew. "Begin the assault." For the first time in the war, the Korthan had no idea what was coming for them. The Korthan Dominion had never feared an enemy before. For decades, they had spread across the galaxy like a storm, crushing every civilization that stood in their path. They were war incarnate, unstoppable, merciless, and feared. Until now. The arrival of the human fleet changed everything. Aboard the Korthan dreadnought Zurakthul, High Warlord Karzul watched from his command throne as thousands of red blips filled his holographic display, each representing his warships. They had the Alliance forces surrounded. Victory was within his grasp. Then he saw something strange. New signals. Unknown ships. Small, fast, aggressive. Karzul narrowed his eyes. "What is this?" A trembling officer turned to him. "We don't know, Warlord. They just entered the system." "Identify them," Karzul growled. A moment later, The answer came. Humans. The name sent a ripple of unease through his officers. Even the warlord himself felt an unfamiliar sensation deep in his chest. Doubt. The Korthan had never fought humans before. They had heard only rumors, whispers from the shadows, stories that sounded impossible. Creatures from a death world, warriors who fought without fear, monsters who turned war itself into an art. Karzul bared his fangs. Let's see if the stories are true. He raised a clawed hand. All ships, open fire. Aboard the human warship Warborn. Captain Elias Grant stood on the bridge, watching as thousands of Korthan ships turned toward them. The enemy was reacting exactly as expected. They're coming, Lieutenant Harlow said, gripping the control panel. Elias smiled. Of course they are. The Korthan had the numbers. They had the firepower. But they didn't have humans. Begin Phase 1, Elias ordered. The first wave of human warships surged forward, moving with unnatural speed and precision. Unlike the bulky, slow-moving vessels of the Alliance, human ships were built differently. They were smaller, deadlier, designed for aggression, not defense. The enemy's weapons roared to life. Streams of plasma fire and missile barrages filled the void. The humans didn't dodge. They weaved. Elias watched with satisfaction as the Korthan's perfect formations fell apart. Status, he asked. Harlow grinned. They're panicking. Elias chuckled. Good. Humans never fought fair. As the Korthan focused their fire on the first wave, they failed to notice the stealth bombers slipping behind their lines. Silent, invisible, until it was too late. Detonate, Elias commanded. Across the battlefield, dozens of Korthan capital ships exploded in brilliant bursts of fire. Their own fleets, packed too tightly together, turned into a chaotic mess of collisions and secondary explosions. The perfect Korthan war machine was crumbling. On the Alliance War Council chamber, stunned silence filled the room as they watched the impossible unfold. The humans had just crippled the largest fleet in the galaxy, in minutes. Vol swallowed hard. What are they? Cora smirked. Our only chance. Back on the battlefield, Elias turned his gaze toward the remaining enemy forces. Now, he said, let's show them what war really looks like. The real battle had just begun. The Korthan fleet was in chaos. Their once perfect battle formation had collapsed, and their capital ships burned in the void. Human warships moved like hunters, striking fast and retreating before the enemy could react. The battlefield was no longer a war zone. It was a slaughterhouse. Aboard the Korthan dreadnought Zurak-Thul, High Warlord Karzul watched in stunned silence. This wasn't possible. The humans had fewer ships, smaller vessels. By all logic, they should have been overwhelmed. But logic didn't seem to apply to them. They fight like predators, one of his officers whispered. Karzul knew the truth. The humans weren't just fighting to win. They were playing with their prey. The Korthan had been the galaxy's dominant force for centuries, but now they were the hunted. On the human warship Warborn, Captain Elias Grant studied the battlefield with calm precision. He had expected resistance, but the Korthan were breaking faster than anticipated. Their arrogance had cost them. Now it was time to push harder. Deploy strike teams, Elias ordered. Within seconds, dozens of human boarding pods launched from their ships, piercing through enemy hulls like daggers. The Korthan had expected a fleet battle. They hadn't expected humans to come inside. Korthan soldiers prepared for combat, but it didn't matter. The humans weren't like other species. They moved fast, fought dirty, and didn't hesitate. Within minutes, Korthan warriors fell to brutal close-quarters combat, their advanced armor shattered by human weapons designed for maximum destruction. Aboard the Zurak-Thul, alarms blared. The warlord clenched his fists. His soldiers were dying too fast. It wasn't just strength, it was something else. A raw, primal instinct that no other species had. They are not warriors, he whispered. They are killers. Karzul knew this battle was lost. The question was, How many of his people would survive? On the Warburn, Elias received a new report. The enemy was breaking. He smiled. Time to end this. As the human fleet surged forward for the final blow, the Korthan understood the truth. They had never feared anyone before. But now, they feared humans. You said. The battlefield was eerily silent for a moment, the kind of silence that came before absolute devastation. The Korthan fleet had lost all cohesion. Their warships, once the terror of the galaxy, were now burning wrecks scattered across space. Human ships moved like wolves circling wounded prey, striking with terrifying precision and disappearing before counterattacks could land. Aboard the Korthan flagship, Zirak-Thul, High Warlord Karzul gripped the armrests of his command chair. His mind refused to accept what was happening. His fleet was the largest the Korthan Empire had ever assembled, yet it was being dismantled as if it were nothing. A deep guttural growl escaped his throat. How? They are fewer than us. We have superior firepower. What are they? A trembling officer hesitated before responding. They do not fight like any species we have encountered. They do not retreat when outnumbered. They do not fight for honor. They hunt. On the human warship Warborn, Captain Elias Grant watched the battle unfold with sharp, calculating eyes. The Korthan were breaking. Their once disciplined formations had collapsed into panic. Now was the time to strike the final blow. Send in the shock teams, Elias ordered. The order was followed immediately. Hundreds of boarding pods were launched from human ships, crashing into Korthan warships with ruthless efficiency. The Korthan had expected a traditional battle, one fought from a distance. They were not prepared for what came next. Human soldiers stormed into their corridors, moving fast and with terrifying precision. Korthan warriors engaged them, but it was futile. The humans fought with a savagery that no other species possessed. They adapted instantly, using enemy cover against them, ambushing their squads, fighting with a relentless, brutal efficiency. On the Zirak-Thul, Karzul could hear the screams of his warriors over the comms. Entire decks were being overrun within minutes. His elite guard, soldiers who had never known defeat, were being slaughtered. One last transmission came from the lower decks. The voice was desperate. They aren't warriors, Warlord. They don't fight like us. They enjoy this. Then, silence. Karzul's claws dug into the arms of his throne. His species had ruled for centuries, believing themselves to be invincible. They had conquered entire civilizations without fear. But now, for the first time in Korthan history, they were the ones who were afraid. On the Warborn, Elias watched as enemy ships began to flee. He smirked. They finally understand. As the last Korthan vessels disappeared into the void, one undeniable truth remained. The galaxy had never feared anything before. But now, it feared humans. The remnants of the Korthan fleet scattered like frightened insects, their once mighty warships limping away from the battlefield. Fires raged across their shattered hulls, and the void of space was filled with the debris of their defeat. Aboard the Warborn, Captain Elias Grant stood at the command deck, his expression calm, almost indifferent. His crew moved with practiced efficiency, securing the battlefield and ensuring no survivors would return to spread false hope. A communication request flashed across the screen. The Galactic Alliance had been watching. Admiral Sulik of the Selthari race, a species known for their cold, calculating minds, appeared on the holoscreen. His 4 eyes studied Elias with a mixture of respect and unease. This outcome was not expected, Sulik admitted. The Korthan Empire has never suffered such a complete and total defeat. Elias remained silent, letting the weight of the moment sink in. He could see the unspoken thoughts behind Sulik's carefully measured words. The Alliance had feared the Korthan, had viewed them as an unstoppable force, and yet, in a single engagement, humanity had crushed them. Sulik hesitated before continuing. The Council will want to discuss this. They may have concerns. Elias smirked. Concerns. You have proven that humans are more dangerous than we anticipated. The balance of power has shifted. Elias leaned forward, his gaze steady. You asked for our help. You knew what we were when you called us. Now you see why we fight differently. Why we win. Sulik exhaled slowly, his mandibles clicking together in thought. And what now? Elias tilted his head slightly. That depends on the rest of the galaxy. On a distant Korthan outpost, the few survivors of the battle transmitted an urgent message to the Korthan High Command. Their voices trembled as they spoke, their proud warrior culture shattered. The humans, they do not just fight. They do not conquer like others. They do not seek glory. A pause. They break you. They destroy everything you are. And when they are done, they walk away. The Korthan warlords listened in silence. For the first time in their empire's long history, they understood what true terror was. It was not the destruction of their fleets. It was not the loss of their warriors. It was the knowledge that the humans had barely tried. You said. The Galactic Council chambers were silent, a rare and uneasy stillness settling over the assembled leaders. Holographic images of the recent battle flickered before them. Twisted wreckage, shattered fleets, and the unmistakable precision of human warfare. No species had ever done this to the Korthan Empire. No force had ever dismantled their war machine so utterly. High Chancellor Vorik of the Valaks, an elder species that had guided the council for centuries, finally spoke. His voice was calm, but there was an undeniable edge to it. We have seen what humanity is capable of. Beside him, Admiral Sulik folded his arms. And now we must decide if we can live alongside such a force, or if we should prepare for the day they turn their weapons on us. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Some nodded in agreement. Others glanced nervously at one another, unwilling to voice their growing fears. Ambassador Ilara Vasquez, the human representative, sat with an unreadable expression. She had expected this. Humans were not like the other races of the galaxy. They had always fought differently. You called for us, Ilara finally said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. You were losing. You were desperate. Humanity answered. The council members turned to her, some with respect, some with dread. Vorik exhaled slowly. And what would you have us do now, Ambassador? Ilara leaned forward. That depends. Do you see us as your greatest ally? She let the words hang, the tension rising like a storm. Or your worst mistake? The chamber fell into silence once more. Across the stars, the Korthan Empire licked its wounds, their once proud warlords whispering among themselves. Their fear was no longer of conquest or retaliation. It was the question that now haunted them all. Had they just survived a war against humanity? Or had humanity merely been showing restraint? You said. The ruins of the Korthan war fleet drifted silently in the void, the once mighty empire now reduced to scattered wreckage. Across the galaxy, species watched the aftermath in stunned silence. They had witnessed something they could never have imagined. The humans had not just won. They had ended the war. In the Galactic Council chambers, the leaders sat frozen, processing the reports. The war had been tipping toward total annihilation for the Alliance. Every strategy, every defense had crumbled before the Korthans' relentless advance, until the humans arrived. The battle logs told a chilling story. Human ships moving with terrifying efficiency, adapting to enemy tactics in real time. Their soldiers, outnumbered and outgunned, fought with a ferocity the galaxy had never seen. The Korthan warlords, once feared across the stars, had surrendered rather than face extinction. Chancellor Vorik broke the silence. We asked for their help. His voice was heavy with the weight of their decision. And they have saved us. Ambassador Ilara Vasquez, the human representative, stood. She had watched their reactions, their awe mixed with unease. You wanted victory, she said calmly. You just never expected what it would cost. The room tensed. The Korthan now fear us, Vorik admitted. But the real question is, should we fear you? Ilara didn't answer right away. She let the weight of the words settle, let the fear in their eyes grow just a little deeper. Finally, she smiled. You feared extinction. We prevented it. You feared defeat. We delivered victory. You feared the Korthan. She paused. Perhaps you should ask why they now fear us instead.